introduce Colorado House District 58's Representative Marc Catlin. Marc, probably most all of you know Marc personally. He is Montrose County, are you third generation?
Yeah.
Third generation farmer. He is a former ag lender, former general manager of the Uncompahgre Valley Water Users Association, current Colorado River District Board member, and current Montrose County Water Rights Development Director. Still?
No.
Not that. Past. Former. Okay, except Colorado River District.
No, absolutely.
Yes. His committee assignments include agriculture, capital development, which is transportation, housing, and local government, water and natural resources vice chairman, and he is the only member of the minority who served as vice chair of a committee in the Democrat-dominated House. In terms of the 2024 session, over 700 bills were introduced, 525 were approved, 180 lost, and as of June 11th, Governor Polis had signed 519 bills into law. It was a busy session, and according to Marc, a kind of a different session. And it will be interesting to hear what he has to say about that. It is my pleasure to introduce Marc Catlin. Please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want the podium? Do you want a chair?
I'm going to come around the podium, I think. I may sit, I may stumble, you know. But I'm home amongst my people, so you kind of know what my weaknesses are. Thank you for coming this morning. I planned on starting out giving you some of those numbers, but you know when a speaker comes up to the microphone and says, well, let's see, we had 705 bills. You ought to take a deep seat because we're going to be here a while. Because some of those, 180 failed. Like she said, there's 525 that passed, and he's signing some. He's got a few left to sign now, but the majority of them have been signed into law. Some of them are being funded now because in July 1, the fiscal year starts over. So, and some of the bills that I ran will probably, they'll be involved in that too. We'll talk about some of them in a few moments. You probably see on television a lot of the things that I see. That there is not much hope for our legislative method of governing, but I don't believe that. I think we might be getting a little better in the Capitol this year. We had our extremes. We had far right, we had far left, we had people their hair was on fire and people that were trying to put it out. But one of the things that I've seen is that it seems like the people that are left of center or right of center seem to be growing. There seems to be a better feel on the aisle. I sit right on the aisle, so I can run if anything goes wrong. But what I'm getting at is that there's every bill that I run has a co-sponsor from the Democrat Party. That's just how we do our business in the Capitol building. You know, one of the things is this is a people business first. You know, I come home to you, my people, my constituents, try to give you a report on what we've done, how it went, what was up, and what was down. But in that building, it's also a people business. Now, granted, that a lot of us that wear this $5 name tag have a great big ego. And some of us bigger than others. But once you get around that, you start to find out these people are really trying to do something. Some of them get elected and they're not sure whether they're going to be a legislator or continue to be a candidate and give rally speeches and shake their fist in the air and hoot and holler. Or if they come in and decide these are the kind of things that my community needs, and they start writing bills that will help those people. Both sides of the aisle. That's not a Republican Democrat thing. It's a hard switch when you first get there to stop being a candidate and start trying to be a legislator. That's where the old timers, the people that have been there for 2 or 3 sessions, can help anybody that's just gotten reelected by simply saying, here, take a look at my bill. Would you like to co-sponsor it with me? Then they get an opportunity to see how you do this, what you need to do, and what you should and probably ought to do. So when I say it's a people business, they think that I'm one of the friendliest people in the building. I think that's because I've told no one to go to heck. I've been able to say, look, I don't agree with that, I'm not going to be able to support that, or no, I'll be a no. Because all people are trying to do is count noses. They want to know how many yeses and how many no's. Once they have that, then they know, okay, I need to go get some more yeses. Then they'll come to your office and have a conversation about that bill that they're really convinced this is the best bill I've ever had. And they'll come to my office and we'll have a visit. But if I'm able to simply say, no, I'm not going to be able to support that, we don't have that rancor between us. Well, I hate you, and those kind of things. That doesn't happen that much in our building. We do have, we have some people that get lit up real quick. And when they do, usually their party will say, take them to the side and say, look, we can't do that right now. My party does that, and I know the Democrats do that. Because you try to keep decorum in the room. Sometimes that's a lot harder on some days than it is on others. The bills that end up causing the rancor are things that are, you can guess, Second Amendment, some of those kind of things that are real wedge issues. We have our arguments. We have our debates. We have long debates. I've sat there from 9 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the morning. Now, was there any good legislation passed in that 24 hours? Oh, probably by 5 o'clock in the afternoon it was okay. But after you get to quitting time, everybody's at quitting time, and then you start to wind down. And when you're that sleepy and that, the only time I've ever had to do those kind of things is during harvest, or those where the weather's coming, we have to stay here to finish this until we get it done. And the attitude of let's stay until we get it done gets you through that. Now, if you had to do that 3 or 4 days in a row, I don't think that'd work. So we do have some of those kind of arguments, and they're rowdy. But one of the things that happened this year that was a little disturbing to me is that there are rules of how we operate in the rules of the House. And there's a rule 14. Rule 14 allows the majority party to limit the amount of debate. Now, after you've had 12 hours of debate, maybe. Or if you're not getting anywhere. But this is a rule that can be voted on by the body as a whole, and a majority vote will make it pass. It doesn't have to be 2/3, it doesn't have to, it's just simply majority. And debate can be limited to whatever they decide. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then that debate is limited and we have to go to the vote after that. That's usually used on second reading, and that's where we do the debate. First reading, you go in and you have your bill. It's read across the desk, in other words, introduced. Then it's assigned to the committee that it belongs in. My committee of Ag, Water, and Natural Resources gets all of those kind of bills, and particularly water and agriculture and natural resources, logging, mining, all of the things that make Colorado, Colorado. So we'll have a hearing, testimony is taken, however much testimony it takes. We've had committee hearings, particularly on wolves, that last till 4 o'clock in the morning, because with that many people wanted to testify. Now, they're not, a lot of times these rooms are completely full, but with the advent of Zoom, you can testify on that bill from your house to the Capitol building, and we will hear your testimony. So what that does is that it expands the amount of testimony that we can take, and we don't limit testimony. I've never been in a session where this leadership or the chairman will say, I'm going to limit this to 2 hours. They will say, and this is the rough part for you and I, we drive to Denver 5 hours at least to get there. You get there, you're sitting in the room, they say, we're going to limit testimony to 3 minutes. It's not as bad if you stay home and you're limited to 3 minutes. You may have to hang around that computer screen too long, but you do get your testimony in. When it comes to the House floor, we debate it. In other words, they present the bill. If it's my bill, I go down and tell the building, this is what this bill is, this is how it does it, this is what we want to do. Good bill, vote yes. That's my statement. Good bill, vote yes. Now, the opposition can come down and they can bring up their issues, ask questions, and create a debate in the well. In other words, at the podium down in front of the seats. And that's what we do. I mean, that's the one place in the state of Colorado that debate should happen, is on the floor of the House. What's been happening is that by using Rule 14, we are able to limit the amount of time we debate, which bothers me because that limits your voice when I'm there. If we're only going to allow it to be 2 hours, I may not get an opportunity to speak, or I'm limited in the amount of time that I can speak, and if it's something that I feel is important, that's what I'm trying to do, is to speak your voice down there. Now, if we get to the point we don't have to use it, we'll be in a lot better shape. But it is a rule that's been exercised 2 years in a row. There's one other rule, and that's Rule 16. I'm going to get off these rules here quick. Rule 16 simply says, I make a motion that we vote on this bill now. Majority passes it, and that bill goes to vote that moment. That's usually done on third reading. Third reading is when we're going to take the recorded vote, where we push the button, and you'll be able to see how we voted. Each individual legislator has 10 minutes to discuss the bill on thirds. 65 of us. And we've done it. What ends up happening then is that slows the process down so much that they want to move these bills quickly. When you have 705 bills in 120 days, you better be hurrying. Because at the end of the session, there were 115 bills waiting with 5 days left. They'd stacked up, and some of them were new bills. You know, you're not supposed to be able to get late bills, but a late bill can be granted by the Speaker of the House, that it can now be introduced. So there was a big stack of work waiting, so they used 16, 8 different times on 8 different bills. So that's something we're all going to have to work on. And there were lots of grand arguments over whether or not we were going to institute the rules. But they were instituted, we went on, life went on. You're going to have to bear with me, I can't handle this. Where is this mic the best? Right there or down here? Down here. Clear up here, snow cone. Good thing I shaved because these little things pull your whiskers bad. There are some good bills that passed, and I wanted to talk to you about those. As an example, kinship foster care homes. What's been happening in our state is that relatives, when mom and dad have a problem and they are not going to be able to take care of the children, historically, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, those kind of people could step in and become the guardian parents for that child or children. The state decided they didn't like that too much and made it very hard for relatives. And relatives were not allowed to collect the dollars that the state of Colorado can supply for foster homes. Well, we had a number of grandparents, and we probably all know some grandma and grandpa that may be helping with their grandkids. It's just the way things are in this area. Not so much if mom and dad have trouble, but you know, I know that my folks, they babysit my kids a lot. And that's kind of the natural thing. But foster care is a different deal, because the state's involved with that. So now, kinship, in other words, related people, can step in and be identified as the foster home for those children. And that foster home now gets the same treatment as the people that are, quote, foster homes and take in children that are not their relatives. I think it will help. I think it will help some of those kids that are in situations that are not good, and grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle are able to step in and say, look, we love you, part of our family, come and be with us. And then the state can help with that if those parents need help. One of the things we tried to do was strengthening the enforcement of human trafficking. This bill makes it a crime of violence sentence multiplier available for human trafficking charges. You see and hear on television every day about human trafficking. It is a terrible, terrible problem, and it's a problem in the state of Colorado. When these people are arrested and charged, it is a crime of violence. You know, I can't describe the violence to you, but I can imagine that if you were locked up in the back of a van, not knowing where you're going and who was maybe going to buy you, that's violence. We need to try and do something about that. That bill goes into effect on the 1st of July. Conservation is, how many of you know what a conservation easement is? Oh, good. What we've tried to do in this session was fix the gaps in the conservation easement program. When they first started it, there were some serious problems with people that signed up for conservation easements. The tax benefits that were given to the person who signed up were withdrawn. People were harmed really bad financially. What this thing's going to do is fix the gaps in that initial program. We probably won't pay them back yet, but it did make conservation easements a better program than what it had been. Conservation easements will help the state of Colorado to continue to look like Colorado as we move into the future. Because what they've done is they've sold the development rights off of that farm. Now you can't build houses on it, can't build a shopping mall, those kind of things. It does have to stay in agriculture. That could be a good thing, particularly as Colorado continues to grow, to just pop out of the ground. You see what's happening in Montrose. we've got houses coming out of places I didn't think they would grow houses. So, you know, one of the things that I tell my kids and I tell my friends is that a rooftop is the last crop that ground's gonna raise. And it changes everything. Something that I thought was important was to reduce the income tax on Social Security benefits. What that does is that when you turn 65 or older, they subtract that income. Now with this bill at 55 years old, people will be able to get that benefit. I think that's a good thing, it will help. You know, when we talk about bad bills to me might not be that bad to you. And it's kind of a judgment on a lot of people's place. So I think what I'm going to do is, there are some bills that I'm sure you're aware of. We may talk about them as time allows. But there are some things that helps costs for you and I. The first one is the tapered refund mechanism. This bill will provide voters with approximately $450 million temporary income tax reduction in tax year 2024. And varying amounts in future years depending on the size of that taper overage, taper surplus. This is one of the things that we're trying to do, is to give people back the money that they put in. Tabor is one thing that makes Colorado completely different than any other state. You get money back. If you paid in too much, then you get money back. I think that's one of the things that makes Colorado very special, and it's probably what's attracting a lot of people to move here. And the idea that you and I get the opportunity to vote on whether or not we're going to raise the tax on ourselves. It's not just instituted, if it's a tax, you get to vote on it, and I get to vote on it. One of the problems is government has figured out if they use the word fee, we don't get to vote on that. There were some bills that were run trying to make that, people had to vote on fees, they didn't pass, they died in the process. The other thing was Senate Bill 24-233 on property taxes. This will reduce the total statewide property taxes by more than $1 billion and institute permanent cuts. That's 25, 26, 27. Commercial property goes down to 27%, ag 2, and they start setting the mill levies for the state. It will make a difference. It's not going to make as much difference as it should, as much as our taxes have gone up. You got your bill, I got my bill. Well, we live in Colorado. It's a very popular place to live, so prices keep climbing. There will be, I think this fall, 2 property tax measures on the ballot. If they pass, then this one will just step back and those will be instituted. So when it gets time to talk about ballot issues, that might be some of the things that the forum would like to do, is to have people come and talk about that. I'd like to talk to you about my bills. The first bill that I want to talk to you about is the Colorado Water Conservation Board projects. This is a bill that we write and run every year, which keeps the projects in the state of Colorado on water funded, and as new projects come on, we fund them. This year was very special because on the Colorado River, you've probably seen some articles in regards to the Shoshone water right. The Shoshone water right is 1,350 CFS. I had a guy once in a meeting and said, "Do you know what CFS is?" "Yeah, chicken fried steak." So we went back and started covering some of the terms. Cubic feet per second, for an example. The water that comes out of the tunnel into the Uncompahgre Valley is 1,000 CFS. This river flow is 1,350 CFS. What it will do is it will keep water in the Colorado River all the way to the state line and help us meet our compact requirements. It comes from that powerhouse that's in Glenwood Canyon. The water belongs to that power plant. XL has agreed they will sell the Colorado River District that water right to hold in perpetuity. We, the River District, will allow them to use the water to generate electricity. And at the time they decide to close that plant, the water right is ours, the Uncompahgre, the Colorado River District. We will then convert it into an in-stream flow, which means that water stays in that river from now on. This is a big deal, a really big deal, because that means that water cannot be bought and Trans Mountain diverted. It can't be used for anything else but to stay in the Colorado River. Why is that a big deal to Montrose County? The biggest part of that is the 15-mile reach in Grand Junction is where the endangered species are really seriously impacted. This keeps water in that stretch of the river for the benefit of the endangered species. That keeps us from having to go through consultation on the endangered species, which allows you and I to continue to divert the water that we have out of the Uncompahgre onto our fields and not have to send it to those endangered species. That's a great big deal, because as times dry up, that water still stays in the river. I said when we did this, it's felt to me like this might be the biggest thing that we could do. 100 years from now, they will look back and say, that was really a good idea. I'm sure glad they did that. It's cheaper than a dam. It's $99 million. So I passed a bill that put $20 million into the purchase of that. I ran the bill. Well, the people voted for it. That could make a great difference to the state of Colorado and to the western slope particularly. The state of Colorado will benefit from it because there'll be water at that point so that they can continue to divert the water they have above that for the water rights that they currently hold. We will never take those water rights away from the Front Range. They're water rights. They were established in 1937. But it puts them at risk because a call on the Colorado River starts at 1922. So if you're younger than 1922, you will probably be shut off by the river, by the water rights in California and those places, to where you won't be able to divert. A call is simply, you have to stop diverting. So with the water in the river, we are making up for any shortages. That crosses the state line, and we say we did deliver our water. That call doesn't come up the river unless it's Mad Max time. So this is a really big deal. I don't think a lot of people talked about it. I do think it's important, and keep your eyes open. Probably see when this happens. Because right now we do have the deal with XL, and I think we are at about $54 million collected towards the purchase of that water right. So we are making progress, and we're making it quickly. I passed a bill that would allow and incentivize gray water usage inside your house. This is not for remodels. This is on new houses over on the Eastern Plains particularly. When we ship water over there, 55% of the water that goes through the meter is 55% of that water is lost to the system because they use it for front lawn irrigation, those things. We're able to capture the water that goes into the treatment facilities. What this will do is allow a homeowner to put in a plumbing session, a plumbing method that they'll be able to use the shower, the sink, the bathroom sink, water again, inside the house. The water from the toilet and that goes down to the facility. It should help save water inside every house, which will help with how much water has to be taken through the meter to that house. It should be a long time savings thing for the homeowners. It should be a great savings for Western Colorado about the water that we're shipping over there. Last year we passed a bill called the Colorado River Drought Task Force. That was where we took 27 people and they volunteered to help talk to us about what should we do with the Colorado River. How should we go about conserving the water in that river for the benefit of Colorado and for the benefit of our requirement at the state line. 27 people took their time out for over about 7 or 8 months. They made recommendations to us, and what we did, the Speaker of the House, Representative Julie McCluskey, and I, and then Senator Roberts and Perry Will, we wrote a bill concerning the measures for conservation of water in the state and took their recommendations and put them into law. For example, on fallowing. There needed to be rules in regards to fallowing. You shouldn't be able to just fallow a farm from now on and get paid to not farm it. So there'll be rules. 3 out of 10 years you can do that on that farm. You have to move the fallow every 3 years so that one piece of ground doesn't lose its capability to raise a crop. The microbes and things in our soils are there, and they're dependent upon water too. So if it's kept dry for too long, you really don't get those back unless you place them back with science. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to be thinking about. And these folks that volunteered to tell us they thought so too. The other thing is that we should prioritize modernizing the delivery systems. You look at the Uncompahgre Valley water users, look how many hundreds of miles we've piped. That pipe keeps salt and selenium from getting into the outflow at the end of the season. It also helps firm up our supply because those ditches are not leaking. You see these ditches with all those willows and things around them? You got leakage problems. So pipe doesn't leak. It's a great opportunity. I think we're going to see a lot more pipe used. I passed a bill that would allow veterinarian technicians scope and practice. In other words, we don't have enough veterinarians in the state of Colorado, particularly large animals, but they all have technicians and aides. So what we're going to do with this bill is we're going to help train up those aides and techs to the point that they get a license and can be used by the veterinarian to expand how much veterinarian practice work they can do for them. It should help the cities too, because pet animals are the same thing. You have to get an appointment weeks in advance before you can get in to see your veterinarian. There's a bill that I ran that I think you're going to like, some of it. We passed a bill in 2019 that would allow the state of Colorado to keep $29 million out of sports betting that was legalized then. I think you might remember DD was the name of the bill. And we voted on it. It passed. Sports betting is so popular today that revenue is just jumping out of the graph is jumping like crazy because everybody's doing it. I mean, I don't do it. I don't know how. You know, if I think they're going to win, okay, I think they're going to win. But I won't bet money on that. But there are a lot of people that are. It's kind of got to be a hobby. What this one is, this is sports betting tax revenue voter approval. That's coming to you this fall that will allow you to vote on the state of Colorado being allowed to keep the tax revenue from that betting for the benefit of water projects and water conservation in the state of Colorado. It's a dependable source of revenue that we don't have to come to you and ask, can we tax you more for water? We tried that 12, 15 years ago. People said, no, we don't want to do that. This will allow the state of Colorado to have that revenue stream above the 29 million, and will allow us to not have to refund it to the casinos that are charging. They get paid for running these programs. The way that one was written is, we didn't think we'd ever get to 29 million. Well, in 3 years, we're here. So, you're gonna get an opportunity to bet on that. A couple of bills on Capital Development Committee. Capital Development is the committee that sets the budget for improvements on colleges and capital buildings and state properties. Where it's gotten the most attention is in the universities. Western University up here, Western Colorado University, has been left out of that for 5 or 6, 7 years. Mesa University has been left out to a certain degree. They've gotten some. But we ran a bill, I guess we ran a gambit on the folks from the Eastern Slope. You have to be at number 10 in order to get funded. Well, Mesa had slipped to 15 and Western was down at around 12. So we just didn't talk about it too much. And then the day that we voted to make the list solid, I talked to a couple of people from the Eastern Slope and said, I need your help. They voted for it. And we were able to bring $4 million to Crawford Hall at Western University and $13 million to Mesa. And that was something I don't think those folks thought we could do that. When I got on that committee, I told the chair lady, she was really kind of rough with me. Wanted to bump chests, I guess. And I said, you need to understand something. I'm a rural legislator. And I'm going to advocate for rural Colorado. I appreciate that you can see Metro State University from the Capitol building through that window. And so they get most of the money. You can't see my universities. And I'm going to advocate for them. Well, evidently some of the folks that sat with me on the committee liked some of the arguments we made, and they jumped right up and voted to put that one on. And it's good. They're both going to be funded this year. So if you get to Western, take a look at the new building they're going to be building, or remodeling the one that they have. There's a bill that I'm very proud of. And it's, did you know that the DAs had not had a raise since 2012? Did you know that? They can't get a raise except every 4 years to come to the legislature and ask for an increase in their pay. They came in 12, 16, 20, and were turned down. Bill died, Bill killed, like that. Well, they came to me this year and said, we really need some help. Because we can't hire young DAs, we don't pay enough. We can't get people to run for DA in a lot of these rural communities because they don't get paid. They're better off in private practice. Well, that made sense to me, and we started looking into it, sure enough, since 2012. So we put together a bill that would allow them to get a pay raise up to the standard in the big cities. Now, when you think about the DA from Denver, this guy gets the base that we're talking about, plus the city and all of these people pour in money to where these guys are really highly paid. But when you look at places like Dove Creek, their guys not paid nearly as much as those guys are. In fact, they're not paid to scale. Our DA was in the same boat. He was having trouble. recruiting and retaining young DAs. So this bill came out of the Senate and it just flew through the Senate, and I thought, hey, here we go, we're gonna run. We ran straight into a brick wall. The Appropriations Committee, you know, it passed out of my local government committee, yeah, no problem yet. We got to appropriations, they said, we're gonna kill the bill. There's 11 people on that committee. We're gonna kill the bill. We're not even gonna listen to it. We're gonna let it die on the calendar. Well, that didn't seem fair to us. So we started lobbying those people, in other words, going to them and saying, hey, could you, what's up? We don't know. The chairman will not bring it across the table. So we talked to every one of those elected leaders. None of them had a problem of being against it. Not one of them. Except the chair. Because there is a movement that we don't want to file more criminal charges against people for some reason. You know, we don't want to create new felons. We don't want to, well, if you did the deal, if you did the crime, probably ought to be charged. Because I think DAs are not just on your and my side. I think they're also on the person who's charged. A bad DA can put an innocent person in jail, in the prison. The same as if they can let a guilty one go. So it seemed to me like part of our system needed to be checked on. So we checked on it. They were still standing there saying, no, we're not going to do it. So within about 2 days, every DA in the state of Colorado and their office called every one of those those committee members. And the pressure got real tight. Because even people that come from Democratic districts, solid Democratic districts, they were calling their representatives and saying, hey, what are you doing? Why is this happening? We haven't had a raise since 2012. The ice jam broke. We went to the committee hearing, but you know, we weren't even scheduled. They just called us up and said, be there tomorrow morning, 7:30. So we got there at 7:30. And this bill was run, it's not mine, it's not all mine bill. I want to give proper credit to Barbara McLaughlin. She's from Durango. She represents District 59. She and I have ran more bills together than any other person in the Capitol building, because her people and my people are the same people. There's just an imaginary line drawn between them. She liked this bill and we worked hard on it. She worked really hard. I want to give her credit for that. We sat down in front of the Appropriations Committee. The chairman said, I want to congratulate the sponsors of this bill. You made this a statewide issue within about a day and a half. You know what we're supposed to do? The bill passed with one negative vote. It came to the House of Representatives and passed in the House, I think, 2 negative votes. And our DAs have now gotten a raise, and along with their offices are going to get a boost. Those are the kind of things I think legislators are supposed to do. Is when you hear something's not right, try to fix it. So that's the one that I think I'm probably, well, there's one other now, just take your time real quickly. I had a local man come to me last summer and say, Mark, do you know anything about sodium nitrite? No. What is it? Oh, it's the product that we use to cure meat, to cure fish, and to make bacon. Okay? What do you mean? He said, children, young people, not children, but young people are using this product to commit suicide. I said, what do you mean? How can that be? He said, well, one of his friend's children, young man, had completed suicide by using this product. So, 2 weeks later, a little lady, a Boulder representative, you can imagine Catlin and Boulder, called and said, hey, do you know anything about sodium nitrite? Yeah, I just heard about it. should we run a bill? I said, yeah, I think we should run a bill. So we ran a bill together that will regulate the transfer and sale of sodium nitrite. You and I go to and buy sodium nitrite to make pickles, okay? But the product is less than 10% pure. It's got other products in it. These folks and here's the problem, is the young people are finding it on TikTok. And the influencer is saying, hey, if you've had it with life, contact me, I've got a packet. These guys were buying 100% pure nitrite, packaging it up, and selling it for $13.35 on the internet to people that are not old enough to smoke. And they're completing suicide. One individual on the internet sold 1,200 packets. Now, there's a war in our world right now, over 1,500 people being killed in October. And why aren't we at war with that guy? I don't know. Because we're a free market. But we're not a free market in Colorado today. That bill will not allow you to buy 100% pure product unless you are a commercial operator. So, slaughterhouses and ham, bacon, those people that produce that, they can buy it because they have a commercial address, they're a commercial operator, they're not packaging it up and selling it to young people. Well, come to find out, while we were running that bill and after it had we were in the process of offering testimony for the bill, I got an email from a person that said we'd had one young woman from Montrose that had done that too. So I guess it was one of those things where my higher power said, Mark, you're doing the right thing, go ahead and push this. Because now you can't buy that product in Colorado. You're not supposed to be able to. I'm sure that people get around it. But that's one bill that came from a constituent, and I'm a believer that bills that come from my communities, that come from the constituents, are the ones that work the best. Colorado had not even thought about this. I had some Republicans jump out of their hats like, oh, you can't regulate anything more. I said, oh, yeah. It's not about regulations, man. It's about suicide. From one young one was 13 to about 30 seemed to be the most susceptible to this. So anyway, that's one of those that hopefully that will stand the test of time, and we will be able to look back on that and maybe save one or two kids. You know, we could go most of the day, but you're getting bored and I'm getting tired. And what? Okay. So one of the other things I wanted to remind you of, I'm termed out as your state representative, which means I will not go back to the House of Representatives. I thought that we were going to come home and watch corn grow. We'd be done, and then we'd retire. Well, the guy that was our senator decided he was going to run for county commissioner in February, 1 month before caucus. We did our homework. It's a winnable race. So I'm running to be your senator from Montrose. So remember me on the ballot. Take a look for that name. And thank you so much for doing all the things that you've done for me in the past. Now, open to questions and whatever you need.
I'll circulate the mic. For those of you unfamiliar with this time, raise your hand, you'll get the mic so that they can hear you on the video.
Mark, with the piping of the Uncompahgre, okay, farmland, et cetera, is that going to run into conflict with the new Colorado water laws?
Well, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. The new bill that came out is dredge and fill. In other words, it's like what the Corps of Engineers used to do. You had to get a permit if you were going to get in the river or if you were going to mess with wetlands. There was a bill, there was a a lawsuit that negated a lot of those rules. So the state of Colorado got really concerned. They thought we would just put a whole bunch of rules on everything. Well, luckily the lady that was running the bill, the Speaker of the House, she listened. She and I are friends. I want you to know we are friends. I went to talk to her and started talking to her about what about ditches, what about drain ditches, what about all of these things. And she was willing to rewrite her bill and also to allow us to put amendments on the bill that would cover those very things. Because you have to get into the river to dig out the head gate, to put in the new head gate, and then you know you're going to probably take out some cottonwood trees and some of those things just like we did before. So those are going to be permitted, allowed, not so much permitted, but they're going to be grandfathered in. Those are the things that have to happen. So ditches, canals, laterals, those kind of things are not covered by this. And I think it will help us. You know, it's not going to hurt us, let's put it that way. That help? Yeah.
Part of it is, a lot of our wetlands is caused by the seeps out of the canals, etc.
Well, that was one of the things I explained to her, that our wetlands here are completely different than the wetlands that are just outside of Breckenridge, is what she had in her mind. You know, with beavers and all that in there, in that little place just south of Breckenridge. And she wasn't aware that half of the wetlands in the state of Colorado were created by irrigated agriculture. There wouldn't be wetlands. So I said, you know, you want to talk about us being partners. Well, that wetland is on my farm. So you're going to just jump the fence and say, oh, by the way, we'll regulate it. So some of these wetlands, you're going to see they will continue. And remember that we had to, when I started piping those laterals, for every acre of wetlands that we removed, we replaced it with 3. That's why we did that Rubidil wildlife refuge down there. We created that. The Uncompahgre Valley Water Users created that, piped the water to it, and took care of all the tamarisks and all that, so that there was 3 to 1 is what we replaced out of the Uncompahgre Valley. I think they're going to go with that again. Jimmy?
Yeah, so with all these bills hanging over your head, how do you keep up with them? Do you have staff? Do you have interns? Who keeps up with them, and how do you stay ahead of them?
Well, I've been run over a number of times, so staying ahead's kind of hard. But that one lady right there is my chief of staff, my wife, my cook, my everything. She does a lot of that work for us. There are, in the House of Representatives, you have the minority caucus and the majority caucus. So the minority caucus, they have policy people that they'll go through bills, look at them, read them, those kind of things. I have to read the bill myself in order to have it in my mind well enough to talk about it. But they give me some policy hints, they give me some, you know, some directives. We do have staff, but it's very short. She goes crazy, but I go back to the building and she has to do the work, so it turned out good for me.
Other questions?
Got one over here.
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk about a co-sponsor bill process. And
Yeah.
you've got a Democratic co-sponsor. Would you explain that process and what's going on there?
Certainly. I'm glad you asked that, because I can write a bill on my own and be the prime sponsor. I've done that 2 times in my career. One was on police horses, and I wanted to see if I could do that, and you know, it took a lot of work, but we did pass it. What I do is I write a bill and go to someone, for example, Barbara McLaughlin, and say, this bill is good for my district. Would you like to read it? Would you read it for me? Yes, she reads it. And I tell her, look, this is good for my district. It might be good for yours. The next morning, it usually happens, before we gavel back into the building, she calls and says, I'd like to co-prime that with you. So it's attractive. in order to pass bills, you know, the scorecard in that building is 46 Democrats and 19 Republicans. And it takes 33 votes to pass a bill. So in order to pass bills, you're gonna have to get some help from the Democrat Party. I try to specialize in legislators, that I have something in common, their communities are like ours, you know, like that. I've done a lot of bills with her. I've done a number of bills with other Democrats, but more than likely I'll be with Dylan Roberts from up around Frisco. He's on the Ag Committee in the Senate. He was on Ag Committee in the House. We've done a number of bills together. And I also have Democrats come to me and say, would you like to co-prime this bill? Oh, I don't know. So we take the bill home, we read it, we look at it. And if it's good for us and good for this district, then we'll say, yeah, we'd be glad to be on that bill with you. It looks good. So that's how that co-prime works. You can also co-sponsor, which means after the bill is on paper with the two House people and the two Senate people, if you're not one of those, you can go down and put your name on it as a co-sponsor, which means that you support the bill, you like the bill, you want to help promote it, you want to help it move across the floor of the House. And I do that a number of times, because there's bills that come out that are maybe not inside my bailiwick, but they're good for Montrose County or good for the 58th district. Well, those are the kind that we need to be involved with to help them move so they don't get killed, or they don't get changed to the point they're not good. But it's a cooperative effort. There's co-prime, co-sponsor, and then there's a sponsor. Sponsor is when the bill goes past on thirds and it passes and you think that's a good bill, you don't put your name on it. People put their name on those bills. That's how that process works. Does that help?
Other questions?
So, Mark, I just want to know, how much do you get paid to be a U.S. representative?
I think it's 43,000.
From that, you then have to find housing and cover everything from that salary, correct?
There is while we're in session, we're paid a per diem. The 43,000 is divided over 12 months. So while you're in session, there's a per diem of a couple $100s a day that helps me pay rent and do those kind of things. It's still not a profit deal, but it does keep me from having to go broke.
And do they feed you guys when you're there all day long, all through the night? So you have to...
All of our expenses are our own. So, you know, it's really more of a service deal than it is a career thing.